Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. It's another Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Today's a special episode. We're going to do a live interview with a seven-figure freight agent, and we're going to talk about some of his transition from W-2 into becoming an independent agent and building a seven-figure business. That's what we're going to talk about today. So thank you for joining me. If you're catching this on replay, hit me up, #replay. I'm going to introduce my guest in a minute or two here. Let's let some people get live. If you're joining me now, hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. Love to hear from you. So here's the agenda. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. I'll try to give you a quick shout out. Then we're going to do the interview with my friend and guest. Then we're going to go into live Q&A at the end, which means at the end, you'll be able to ask my guests or myself any questions that you have, right? We'll do our absolute best to try to answer and put you in the right direction. And so that's the agenda. That's where we're at. That's my story. That's what I'm sticking with. So hang tight here, get live. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from, whether you're on YouTube or you're on LinkedIn or you're on Facebook, wherever you're at, hit me up. We have, Fadi, thank you for the kind words. Brian from Independence, Oregon. Welcome, welcome. TMP Hustle from San Antonio, Texas. Yeah, glad you're back. Ella Tutusa from San Jose, California. Jordan from El Paso, Texas. Henry from Cali. Anthony from Temple, Texas. Corey, as usual, from Billings, Montana. April Dean from Temple, Texas. So we got people coming in from all over the place. Usually we'll have people from South America. We'll have people from India or Europe or Canada. So, I've had my Freight Broker Bootcamp startup program. I looked at it a couple years ago. Last time I looked at it, we had students go through that program. We had over 10,000 students go through that program, but from 16 different countries, which kind of blew my mind. Because when I think about freight brokering, I think about it as a kind of like a US thing. Maybe that's just my brain and my stupidity. But, we've had students from 16 different countries, and I've had students that have went and built successful freight brokerages from other freight brokerage and freight agencies from other places like Colombia and South America and India and Canada and even Africa, different countries, where we've highlighted different students that have been very fortunate, went on and built successful businesses. So that's where we're at. Let's see what we got. A few more shout outs. Juvenile from Miami, Florida. Nina from Queens, New York. Emmanuel from Manchester, Connecticut. Golden SpeedX from Sacramento, California. Awesome. David Sapita from St. Paul, Minnesota. So we got people from all over the place. I'm glad you're here because, again, today is going to be more of an interview format. I'm going to bring a friend and a former client of mine who also happens to have built a seven-figure freight broker agency. And we're going to see if he can impart maybe a little bit of his story, a little bit of inspiration for others that are in the grind right now, trying to build a real business. And then obviously maybe some lessons along the way that you guys can extract and try to apply and help you get there faster. Okay. So that's where we're at. We've got some people live. So let me just do a quick check here. Make sure I got all my ducks in a row, fix my hair. Okay. Fix my hair. We'll do all that and get a quick drink, and then we'll get this show on the road. Okay. Okay, guys, my guest today, friend, former client, Ricky Payne, currently an agent for CRST. He has almost a decade of experience in logistics. And again, he's built a seven-figure business as a freight agent in pretty short order. So welcome, my friend. How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good, good. I'm so glad you're here because, just a backstory for everybody. You were a part of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, and I don't even know how long ago it was. It was a while ago. And we had a blast. We had a lot of fun. You were a really cool part of the group. You asked a lot of questions. We had a lot of dialogue. We did a lot of back and forth. And I was hoping that eventually we'd be able to get a chance to do this. So thank you for accepting the invite, and
Of
I look
course.
forward to diving in. All right. So let's start here. The obvious question is, so how's biz, right? How's business? How's things going for you now?
Business is going pretty well. For the spread of commodities that I move, July is kind of a wacky month. Usually it gets slow right at the beginning and then starts picking back up. So we're kind of having a nice, easy Monday today. Not too much craziness, which I I value that now, right? It used to go from I need something to do to now it's like, okay, now I can get a little organized. But things are going really well.
Right. Back in the day, you were hoping the phone would ring, right?
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
please ring, right? Now it seems like it probably sometimes you're looking for a break. So let's kind of set the plate and take a little bit of a backdrop, okay, or a little bit of a back step here
sure.
to get back to kind of the origins. How did you get into logistics? I mean, what was the path? I mean, how did you stumble into it? I've shared mine before. Tell me how you got into it.
Sure. So I was in the automotive industry. I was a bonded dealer in New Hampshire. Well, my father had a bonded dealer's license in New Hampshire, and he kind of got me into it. And I started getting into buying junk cars. And once you start going down that road and seeing where the money goes and all the scrap and what it's worth, I ended up making a decision to own a scrap company. Started small. I was picking up and buying catalytic converters out of a E150 work van. Uh, Speed up a little bit, went from there to having 2 trucks, a flatbed, and doing about 2 full truckloads of car batteries a week out of my shop in Leominster, Massachusetts. So I was a shipper, and I had a couple local guys. They were running down to Johnson Controls in Rhode Island for me, and they were charging me something like $1,000, something like that. And I got a call from TQL broker. Guys like, hey man, I can get that done for you all day at 600. And I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it. I'm like, you're a middleman. How is it possible that you can save me money and you mean to tell me that I don't have to call anybody? You handle it all for me. I didn't believe it. I gave him a shot and it ended up working out. I became friends with that guy. Couple years after that, the scrap markets kind of went to hell. And he's like, you should take your shot at brokering, man. You know trucks. You know how to talk that language. I think you'd be great at it. I ended up getting a job at TQL. Big difference between owning a company and being a startup at a big box brokerage. Both the money was poor, it's results driven. I was probably the oldest person in the office too. This was back in 2016. But I put my nose to the grind, and here we are today. I mean, that's how I got in. From the ship side.
So you really, your first job in logistics, actual logistics, I mean, you did it, you had to handle some of it from a shipper's perspective.
Yeah.
But it was TQL.
TQL. Yeah.
Okay. So listen, everyone knows TQL is infamous, right? They're infamous at this point for their non-compete and a few other things.
Oh yeah.
How did you navigate that? Because I've had, when I say I have and continue to have, tons of people reach out to me through phone and email and LinkedIn that are current or former TQL employees. And, usually they're scared to death. They, because they don't want to get sued and
the
whole myriad of legal issues. How did you navigate all that? What did you do?
Yeah. Well, so and I'm not going to go into a whole rant of how much I dislike TQL. I'm sure there's some great brokers.
We don't need to do that.
But also, it just wasn't for me, right? It just wasn't for me. So I made the decision. I said, okay, I think I'm going to try to get away from them. And I started looking at other W-2 brokerages, and basically nobody would touch me with a 10-foot pole. They're like, they have a non-compete. This is a problem. There's nothing we can do. We parted ways, and I was really left, with nothing but hope in my hand. In fact, I had a conversation with with Evan. So this is back in 2017. I tried to call LDI to see if I get set up as an agent. One of the things that was brought up to me was, if you go after anybody, even if it's not your old clients and they find out, they could sue you and they could attach the whatever brokerage is onto the lawsuit. And that's not something that anybody's trying to do.
Right.
So, I really was like, I went to my dad, and I asked my dad, what do I do? He goes, wait 2 years and then go after every client they have. So that's what I did. It's exactly what I did.
So you had a 2-year non-compete. You basically just waited out,
Yeah, it was a little bit longer than 2 years. The non-compete might have been 2 years, but I waited right until it was right at the beginning of COVID, 2020.
Mhm.
And I went back, got a job at a W-2 brokerage. That's really where I refined my skills, right? Carrier selection, vetting, knowing how to read all the metrics. What's a good carrier look like on paper versus a bad, all that stuff, right? I really refined it there. I was there for almost 3 years, and they were moving away from remote work. They wanted to open up more satellite locations, and we had a discussion about it. And pretty much, I was at a place where I was like, "Look, I know I could do this on my own. I want to get my own clients because at that point, I was only an account rep. So they handed me clients. I managed quote to cover on a pod model,
Mhm.
but I wasn't making any commission. They had an outside salespeople that didn't handle any of the operations, and so I kept saying to them, "Look, for me to make the money I want to make, I know I have to bring on business. Get me to a place where I can do that on your platform." It's just never happened.
Right.
Now, it's nothing bad about them. They're a great company. It just wasn't the direction that I needed to go in at that time. So we parted ways
So
amicably.
before we move forward, I want to backtrack
Yeah.
again because I think that one of the biggest lessons or one of the biggest values of having a guy like you on this interview is is there any advice? Is there anything you learned about that process, that painful process of, going to TQL, deciding it wasn't for you, and then having to wait that non-compete out? Was there anything you can share with anybody on, as far as a lesson? I think there's probably a ton of people that are currently working for TQL or have left TQL recently that would love to become a freight agent, but for whatever reason, they're just too scared, or they're just, in that spot where they're unsure.
Right. So if I could go back and do it over again, I probably wouldn't have taken the job at TQL. I would have seeked out a different W-2 brokerage with a more lax, maybe with a non-solicit, but not with a non-compete. Remember, they're two separate different things, guys. The W-2 brokerage that I just spoke about that I was at through COVID, I had a non-solicit, which I honored, but I didn't have a non-compete. So that allowed me to re-enter the industry elsewhere without there being any legal ramifications. I honestly, I don't even remember signing it. It was emailed to me when I quit. Hey, don't forget. And they told me I couldn't work in trucking, anything. I couldn't do anything that had to do with trucking, is what they said.
Yeah. So just so you guys understand, a non-compete prevents you, based on the terms of those agreements, from competing with that company in any way, shape, or form. So you can't go work for anybody else. You can't go start your own business if you're in any way competitive with them. A no solicit or a non-solicit means that you can't solicit their customers, but you could leave and go start your own business or go work for someone else, even if you are competing. But because I just want to clarify that, because not everybody fully understands that. And I think that's good advice, because especially you weren't a young guy coming right out of college. That's usually their, the MO of a big broker, right? They recruit these guys right out of college and they get them to sign some sort of a non-compete.
Exactly.
And they don't even know what they signed, right? They don't even know what they signed because they don't consult a lawyer. They don't, they don't even review the document. And even if they did, they wouldn't really know what it said, because it's probably, they're not familiar with contract.
No,
even if they did, they've sold their soul, right? They don't realize it.
That's exactly what it is.
And just so you know, I've been on all sides of the non-compete. I've been a broker, from that side, from the agent side, from the whole thing. I mean, I've been, so trust me, there've been plenty of lawsuits, right? And the only winner in those lawsuits is the person who has the money to fight it.
Right. And the lawyers.
And the lawyers. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, enough about that. Listen, just be careful what you sign if you join brokerage, and be careful what you sign if you start as an agent. Read it. Make sure. If you have some concerns, have a lawyer review it. Right? Just have a lawyer review and explain exactly what it means before you sign an agreement, especially as a W-2 or agent. Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about, your first agency, I think you started HD Ships. What was that, like in 2023 or 2024?
2023.
Okay.
2020. Sorry, excuse me. 2024.
So HD Ships, you started there. You were an
Yep.
independent agent. You
Yep.
finally had the platform to be able to go out and get your own customers, make a good commission. So tell
Yep.
me, first year, okay, year one, how did you do? What were the results from a sales perspective?
Sure. So we started in February. It was right around Valentine's Day. I signed it, and just you know, just for clarification, because I'll get jumbled up. So I know it doesn't show it on my LinkedIn. I actually started at another brokerage, and then I moved to HD in a couple months. And it's a quick part of the story. But so I started with this brokerage. They in February, and I think I moved my first load the first week in April. So it took like a month and some time. It was a recovery customer. It was somebody that I had brought on while I was at the last W-2 place that I had been at, somebody I know, and I moved a load for him. I started accumulating. I got another customer, and then I got a decent sized customer. By June, I think in June I was doing roughly 25,000 a week in revenue or so. I know the month of June I did almost 150,000 is what I did. And so things ramped up pretty quick. There was a period of time where I had nothing to do other than cold call. And it was like a good month and a half. I mean, at least. And then, but it really felt like once I started moving freight again, I had this confidence about me. It was almost like I needed training wheels again. I forgot that I knew how to do it. You know what I mean? And then you win the first quote. They say, set it up. You get the truck. It all goes in. You're like, wait a minute. This is what I do. I know how to do this. Yeah. And then I think that confidence portrays over the phone when you're cold calling too.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
sure.
With 100%.
Let's hone in on that a little bit. Year one, do you have a rough figure gross revenue? I don't need to know profit, but
Yeah.
gross revenue 24.
24. Yeah, it was a little bit north of $1 million.
Just about $1 million.
Total revenue.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was.
I was a little north of $1 million. I think it was 1.1 or something.
Little less than a full year. Okay.
Yep.
So we're in 25. We're 6-7 months in. What have you done up to this point, and what are you expecting maybe total for the year?
Yeah. I'm going to be somewhere. I'll land somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 for the year, depending. Right now, I think I'm pretty darn close to 2, like 1.75 or something like that. I know. Yeah. I try to take a look, but I've got 2 different companies that I worked at this year because I left HD. So I'd have to add up the, you know what I mean? And, but regardless, yeah, no, we're doing pretty good. I mean, I have some big weeks. 2 weeks ago, I did $100,000 in 1 week in revenue.
Nice.
Yeah. I posted it on LinkedIn.
You're going to more than double, potentially triple.
Oh, easy.
Year 1 to year 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So here's the big question, because you and I have had conversations about scaling your agency, right? We've had some conversations, some texts, some phone calls, some emails, some back and forth. And so my question to you, before we kind of talk a little bit about that, what's the ultimate goal? Like if you had, what's the 5-year goal, right? Because my goal when I started my freight brokerage, I wanted to build $100 million freight brokerage.
Yeah.
Right? And I knew from day one that my goal was to sell it. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life doing logistics. I saw an opportunity. We capitalized on it. I sold it. Not everybody's goal is the same, and that's okay. Being an agent can be a great lifestyle business, right? As far as like making a good amount of money, working from home, still being able to spend a good amount of time with your family, yada, yada, yada. But some people want to build, there are agencies out there. People don't realize it, but there are freight agencies out there that do $100 million in sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
Easy. So, I know a few.
Yeah. So the point is where are you on that spectrum? What's kind of your 5-year plan from a growth perspective? Sure.
And I'm trying to think of a way to explain this. I know I can be wordy. Right. So I wrote up the ideal customer profile when we were doing the Sales Accelerator course, right? Yep. Now, my ideal customer profile versus yours, Dennis, probably looks a little different when you were a broker. I know some of the big enterprise accounts you had brought on. That's not my bread and butter. My bread and honey is, 1 or 2 guys, 50 to 100 employee company. I'm not dealing with 15 different people. I'm really able to build relationships with one or two people, maybe, 5 to 25 truckloads a week, probably more closer on the smaller side. And that's where it just works. It just works for me. Smaller customers do not mean easier, guys. There's more accountability for sure, but I like that. And I think that for me to build a business off those types of customers really requires my handy touch, right? I'm not looking into building a pod model where I've got, 50 guys booking all my freight and I'm quoting all day. I'm not looking to do that. I'm thinking maybe build a little bit of an ops team behind me and then eventually take somebody green, mold them as best I can, and then create another account manager that person knows how to quote. They can cover, they can do everything I can do, but they can do it independently. I don't have to always be the one jumping in.
Yeah.
I think no matter which direction you go as far as growth, Dennis, we've talked about this.
Yep.
There's pros and cons to all of them.
Yep.
For me, like my customers basically said, like, if we're not dealing with you, we don't want to deal with you. I know it sounds a little crazy. Like we want you, you know what I mean? And it that's the gratification I get from my business. I like to help people.
Yeah.
It's really what I like to do.
Yeah. So something I'm going to just kind of chime in on something you mentioned, which I think is really important. I get the question all the time, how do I go out and get these big, annual bids? And I want to do business with these Fortune 100 brands and I want to have volume shippers. Listen, the reality is if you're a startup, you have no business going after those accounts anyways. And there are way more small to medium-sized shippers than there are these large volume shippers, right?
Yeah.
So I believe that most brokers are more suited to the small to medium size.
I would say that.
I believe there's more opportunity there, right?
There is.
And I do believe that the sales process is a little easier. It's not easy, but it's easier to navigate. Large companies try to intentionally make it difficult with a lot of bureaucracy in order to get your foot in the door. A small shipper, you might call them and he might pick up the phone and you're dealing with the only decision maker there, right? And he doesn't have a laundry list of check boxes that you have to go through in order to start moving freight. He's got to like you, he's got to trust you, and you got to have a decent rate, and he might give you a shot, right? Especially in in the types of accounts that that you were describing. So I love that you've kind of focused in on them. So your goal is you want to continue to grow. Do you have any size kind of an idea of where, from a revenue perspective, I mean, you're going to do a few million, you're talking 5 years from now, you want to be doing 5 million or 10 million. I mean, you may have not even thought about it.
Yeah, no, so when I made the move over to CRST, I had the pleasure of meeting with the president of the division and the VP of agent development. We both were agency owners, and we were talking about scale. And I'm a big, the wise seek counsel, right? So Dennis, you said, like, I've spoke to you about this. I've reached out to those that have done it before me, and I'm trying to select the path that's best for Cold Steel Transport. From a revenue perspective, I don't see any reason why next year I'm not doing above the $5 million mark. Mm-hmm. And at that point, whether it be outsourcing, which I'm probably not going to do, or taking somebody on, I'm going to need help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 100%. I don't think personally I could do more than I might be able to do about 15 to 20 trucks a day by myself, and it'll burn out after about a month. I can do it for about a month, and that's because I have projects that I do like that much during a course of a week, and I successfully do it. But when you're doing that, going in all different directions, you know what I mean? It gets tough. You
will definitely burn yourself out trying to do that. So the path there is you hire somebody to do some of the operational stuff, the busy work, the quotes,
exactly,
posting, maybe even negotiating some trucks to put on loads, but it's under your watch, under your training.
I mean, I'm drawing it up as, through your advice, mark down the hardest things you do to the easiest things you do. And I did that. I have a list. I have it down in my it's in my file cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
And track and trace, checking on trucks, setting appointments, and then you start getting into booking trucks, negotiating, knowing how to set appointments, requesting appointments, keeping track of all those things with a multiple customers over multiple different receivers and shippers. And I'm like, okay, if I can get somebody to take the first 3 things off this list for me for a day to day, that's going to eliminate at least 2.5 to 3 hours of my day on a busy day. On a slow day, maybe it won't take that. I already have time, because I have time to do this today. This Monday was slow. So, but that's kind of the angle I'm going on. Find somebody young, green, wants to learn, hungry, that I can say, here, let me, I don't know about everybody else here. Like, the way I was taught was I was thrown in the weeds at TQL. Like, hey, you've got the rep that I was working with was like, all right, I'm posting this, your phone's going to ring. And I don't remember thinking what I was going to look at. All of a sudden, I've got 10 lines on 2 different phones, and I'm doing the double phone, and I'm like, well, this is crazy.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to be the way I'm going to do this with somebody. But
I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that.
It weeds out those who can't handle it. But think about it: at those big box brokerages, in order to be profitable to them on the system that they have, you've got to be doing 5 to 10,000 in gross profit a week, which you're not bringing home much of that, 20% of that, if you know what I mean, if you're lucky. So to think about the amount of loads you have to move to get that volume, right? As an agent, I've got the freedom to say, I don't want that business. This is the business I want. And, make it what I want it to make it.
Yeah. Honing in on that. Let me expand on that, because this is a good time for that. So the type of business that you want, I don't want this business. I want this business. You kind of talked a little bit about the fact that you're focused on the smaller type clients. Talk to us a little bit about the niche, because I think you're in steel, right? You're focused more on steel, but you've probably got some other niches as well, maybe that you've kind of tapped into. Talk to us a little bit about how you picked that niche and kind of the evolution.
Right. So I owned a recycling company. I had a background in steel, rudimentary, scrap versus selling new prime, stainless, carbon, fusion blasted, whatever, OCTG materials. I'm not qualified to be a sales rep for that stuff, even today, but I can hold a conversation. It gave me just enough to be able to have conversations with shippers, not about freight. Okay, that was the biggest thing. I knew that walking in. I had a sales background, right? This is something Dennis talks about all the time. Sound different, right? Everybody's heard I've got trucks. Everybody's heard this, but calling and talking specifically about their business. Hey, I see that you guys were talking about an increase in line pipe sales. I'm just curious, with tariffs, how's that affecting that?
Right.
Questions like that,
Yep.
So that's how I got into steel. And last year it was like, February, like I said, the first load I moved was steel. I had done refrigerated beverage and food at my W-2. So, I mean, I understood it. I knew it. I knew the hot areas, geographical stuff like that. And so I just started calling Bedford beverage suppliers and co-packers. And I landed my first co-packer. He's one of my bigger customers. And he introduced me to one of his customers, and so on and so forth. So the reason why I called my agency Cold Steel Transport is because 50% of it's steel, but then about 35% of it's refrigerated beverage.
Right.
And then there's a small piece of dry, and I have a cosmetics customer, and I do some LTL on the side too. So, but yeah, I just got a load request. Talk about steel.
So you took what you were familiar with, which was the recycling, which is metal and steel, and then your past experience working in another brokerage where you were doing beverages and reefer and van. So you basically just took some of the things that you were familiar with, comfortable with. You could talk the lingo. You could have an intelligent conversation with a prospect, and then you just use that as kind of your foundation.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that you pointed out in Sales Accelerator is I tend to be wordy. And I'm sure I'm doing it a little bit now. It's part of my personality. It's also part of where I live. I'm from Boston. I don't know if you guys could figure that out. I got a tracksuit and I have an accent. I try to use that to my advantage, but when you're calling in Houston, I see some of you guys from Texas. I think it's hard for me to get past that. Oh, he's a northerner. He's probably going to be, one of those. You know what I mean? And so the idea was like, okay, how do I get people to a place where we can be personable? Because as soon as you talk business, walls go up and it's all business. So I took what I learned, took Dennis's advice, and that's the direction I went. My conversations with steel suppliers versus beverage suppliers, not only do they sound different, but I am far better with steel suppliers. If once I get on, I don't know what my batting average is. I'm not keeping sales metrics like that right now. I'm just focusing on getting better every day. But I feel like almost every time I have a good conversation, I end up moving freight. But with beverage, it's not always that way.
Yeah, I'm gonna pat Ricky on the back for a second. When we met and he was part of my Sales Accelerator, we spent a couple months together doing coaching in a group environment. That's my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. But what I loved about Ricky, and part of the reason why I decided to have him on here, was during the Sales Accelerator, if I'm not mistaken, during that process, right, when you were learning the new program and we were going through this, and you were still fairly early in your agency business, I think you landed 2 new clients during the Sales Accelerator, leveraging some of the things we had talked about and some of the strategies we talked about during the program, right?
Yes. I started seeing results right away. And it really just came down to changing my tune and practicing in the group, because it's a group setting. It's not just like a college where, Dennis is the professor and there's a test. It's not, it's all hands on. And I just listened. I took the criticism and the advice and implemented it, even if I didn't think it was going to work.
See, that was the most important part, right? There's lots of great information out there, and you can learn by reading a book, and you can learn by taking an online course, and you can learn by asking people questions. The secret, what I have found, is having the willingness to actually try it in the real world and implement it. And so every day he would, or, every week he would come back and he's like, hey, I tried this and it worked. And and we would refine it and we would go back and forth. So that was exciting. And that was part of the reason why I had you here. And part of the reason why I knew you'd ultimately be very successful in this business.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for the kind words about the Sales Accelerator. But let's do this. We're going to wrap this up real quick, but I just want to ask you this. If you had to give new brokers or new agents, one piece of advice, right? One piece of advice about their first year in the business. Okay. Don't do it. I don't want any more competition. Yeah, no, I hear that sometimes too.
Seriously, I know this can sound cliche. Just invest in yourself and don't give up.
Yeah.
Invest in yourself and don't give up. One call can change your life. Yeah. One good call. There's that guy out there who likes the same things you like. My number one customer, our wives have the same name. We like the same foods. We think similar politically. We dislike all the same stuff. And we have a relationship that has nothing to do with freight. Therefore, the freight comes to me and it gets done. And I have pleasure doing it. He has pleasure doing business with me. Everybody's happy. Because you like to work with your friends.
Yeah. I tell people you're just one shipper away.
Really is true.
You're one shipper away from paying your mortgage. You're one shipper away from paying your car payment.
Yeah.
You're one shipper away from taking that dream vacation. You're one shipper away from sending your kid to college. And you're one shipper away, from putting yourself in a position financially that you don't have to be a Walmart greeter when you're 75 years old.
Exactly.
Okay. So listen, I think that's a great way to end it. And Ricky, listen, I really appreciate you being here. You can tell how busy this guy is. He's been responding to emails and texts, and he's multitasking, and he's doing everything he's got to do as a broker. And that's just the world we live in. So any parting words you want to share with them, maybe if they want to connect with you or something, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah. I love shop talk, right? It refines my ability to be able to explain to people what I do. And yeah, I'm always open for a conversation, 100%.
Probably
You
the
know,
best place,
and
maybe LinkedIn.
oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Connect with him on LinkedIn. And listen, once again, I appreciate you being here. Appreciate all the advice and sharing your experience. You know, I had a feeling that you were going to really push the envelope and you were really going to see some success. I'm excited,
thank you.
what the next couple of years are going to have. So thank you very much. For those of you that want to stick around for the live Q&A, we're going to get started in just a minute. Thank you for joining us. If you guys are curious about the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, we mentioned it a ton of times during this call. It wasn't designed to be a promo, but it's just part of how I met Ricky and the experience that we've had. You guys can go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. It's not open right now. It's sold out. But if you get on the wait list, you will get notified when new spots open up. So thank you for joining. All right, cool. So we're going to do some Q&A, and then Ricky's got to be on his way. He's got a busy day, ahead of him. I'm sure there's always unexpected fires and things that are going on. So if you guys want to get on the wait list, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Again, that is for people that are specifically looking for sales coaching. If you're just looking for startup help, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. That's my online course. You guys can enroll in that. You get 24/7, 365 access. But if you're already past that, and maybe you're already a broker or you're already an agent and you're looking for help, how to get shippers, how to be different, and how to not, beat yourself over the head, getting tons of rejection every day and having to spend, 6 months trying to get your first client, get on the wait list. Okay. I've had over 1,000 students go through that program. Okay. So enough about that. Cool. So if you guys have questions, hit us up in the comments and we will jump in. And if you have a specific question for Ricky, specific question for me, or both, let us know. I think there's a question here right now. Rad Freight Brokerage, do you hire employees or contractors? How many people do you have working for you? That's for you.
Yep. So how do I answer that? So at the previous brokerage I was at, I did have ops people that could be assigned to me for help. As far as any direct employees, I don't have any yet. That's something that, and I don't know when you tuned in, Dennis and I, we're kind of talking about that next step. I think eventually the game plan is going to be to do a direct hire. I'll do a direct hire. I'm looking at office space this week, right around the corner from my house. Two rooms, 5 minutes away, $600 a month. And that'd be step one. And then step two would be interviewing people.
Yeah. So right now he's a solo broker.
It's all me.
TRST is a solo agent and he's moving all the freight himself. So he's wearing all the hats and he's answering all the calls, but he knows that scaling is going to require him to find and train somebody to help him do some of the things that are, that aren't only Ricky things, right? That other people can do. And then that's how he'll scale. So good question. Okay, question. Golden Speed X. I'm a carrier since 2019. I have a ton of dispatching experience. Should I start as a freight agent or a freight broker? Well, I'll give you my 2 cents, right? You have dispatch experience. You have trucking experience, right? So you have a lot of the experience that I didn't have when I first got started. I didn't have any trucking experience. I didn't have any brokerage experience. I didn't have any shipper experience. I didn't have any carrier experience. By all rights, I probably didn't even have the right or the brains to realize that I probably should have started as an agent. So, because I didn't have that, but you have that. So I think some of it comes down to the financial situation that you're in currently and your risk tolerance. Okay.
Yeah.
Being a broker it's more involved. Okay. Meaning you got to jump through the hoops to get your authority. You got to pay for your bond. You've got to do all that. You got to handle the back office. You've got to be able to deal with all the factoring. So if you don't mind handling the back office and you got a little bit of capital, I'd say start as a broker. But if you don't, if finances are tight or, you're just too busy to really do a lot of that stuff with your other business, I would say starting as an agent is a very viable way to go. I mean, you're seeing a guy right here who's making multiple making 6 figures plus working as an agent. And I've had other agents on here who make 300, 400, 500, over $1 million a year as an agent. So the opportunity is there, even as an agent, because the key is you got to be able to get clients. You got to be able to retain those clients. So I think that where you're at, maybe the brokerage side, depending on your financial, but if not, do not hesitate to start as an agent, because I personally think the agent gig is the best gig in town. You got anything you want to add to that, Ricky?
So, I mean, one thing, and if anybody follows me on LinkedIn, and people have always asked me, what's your margin percentage? I don't ever really disclose the exact, but I'll say this. If you look at all the publicly traded companies, it's really easy to tell. They're all between about 10 and 15 or 10 and 20%. I'm in there. One thing I think I do a little bit differently than other brokers is I have a very transparent discussion about money with my clients. I don't like going cheap. I take Dennis's advice on that. Like, I don't do the get in the door rates. I tell them straight out. I go, look, I'm on this, it's under 1,000 in revenue. I'm a 20% guy on this. Under 1,000 in revenue, that's $200. I got to look at the cold hard money. And if you're saying that you need it done right, well, let's try it out with one, and then we'll go from there, because everybody always comes back. And the biggest thing about time management when you start, or like making that risk. I mean, and if I understand the question right, I figure in February I didn't have any money. I was collecting, so I didn't have any income that was viable. And my fiance had some savings, and she was like, if you think you can do this, I believe in you. Go do it. Don't worry about anything. Like, you just need to focus on that. I know you. If you worry about everything else, it's going to impact your performance. If you just worry about that, you'll do awesome. It was the hardest block I ever had to get over. The fact that I was working, not for a paycheck. But then once you move that first load and you're like, whoa, I just put $210 in my pocket, free and clear. I mean, there's taxes and everything else after that. Multiply that by, you just do one a day, and it's not a living, but it's a start, right? Yeah. It's a start.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. So yeah, so the risk is way less on the agent side, a little bit higher on the brokerage side. Really depends on your financial situation, your experience, and your risk tolerance. But I think you're borderline, but don't hesitate starting as an agent. Fact is that if you can't make money as a freight agent, you're not going to make money as a freight broker.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be on. Yeah. It doesn't, whether you own your own MC or you go as an agent. Yeah. It's either you're going to be able to do it or you're not. And then I think, like, for me, everybody thought I was going to start my own MC. I didn't want to do that. It was too much work. I got to worry about paying carriers. I got to get a factoring company or go to the bank or get private equity. Whatever the case may be to bring cash flow. You know what? I don't have to worry about any of that. I book my freight. I cover my freight. Invoices get tossed out 2 or 3 times a week. They're going out on time. My customers handle it with my billing department. Everything's fine there. I don't need to be bothered outside of operations.
Yeah.
And that's what the big upsell is for me.
Yep. All right. Next question. Vitaly asks, what do you think about CRM systems, and specifically about shipper CRM to get shippers? Do you use a CRM, Ricky?
Yeah, I do.
What do you use?
I use Sales Dash.
Josh Lyles.
Josh Lyles. I love Josh. He's awesome. He's so it's just a CRM meant to be able to capture specific information that you would need as a freight broker, lanes, equipment, stuff like that. And it's reasonable. I think it's super reasonably priced.
Yeah. It's a specific CRM. So I had Josh on an interview a while back. He's a friend of mine. We've partnered. I've referred a ton of people to him. I've never had a complaint from anybody who's ever went to him. So now to dive into shipper CRM, I know Tim Hyam. He's an investor and partner in that, right? He's from Ascend TMS. He's also part of that. I know a couple of the other guys that are part of that. I have nothing bad to say about it. I haven't used it personally. I've seen some demos and things like that. So I got nothing bad to say about it, but I don't have a lot of experience with it. So that's something you'd have to kind of explore on your own. I don't think I can add a whole lot of context to it. Do you have any experience with it, Ricky?
As far as what?
As far as, like, have you ever used it? If you do,
no, the only CRM I've ever used is Sales Dash. I've never looked at any of the other stuff, and here's To find shippers, I mean, you got to look at what do you know, what can you have a conversation about, and then that's your niche, and then you start there, and then you go out. And you got to just get on the phone. There's no easy way to do it. There's just like I could spend $25,000 on a Super Bowl or $125,000 on a Super Bowl commercial. 0 shippers are calling me.
Yeah,
like that's not easy. You call them. You know?
For sure. Cool. All right. So, any other questions you guys have? Hit me up in the comments. Here's another one from Brittany. Do you remember how you felt when you moved your first load, Ricky?
Yeah. I was like,
tell us a little bit about that. Tell us what was the load? I mean, how did it transpire? The first load, and I'm talking the first load you ever moved, even back.
It was steel coils. Yep, steel coils, Pensacola, Florida to Houston, Texas. I knew nothing about flatbeds. I knew how to put a car on a flatbed. I knew, basic limited stuff. I didn't know straps, chains. Oh, they use chains on flatbeds. I mean, I had no concept. So I was as green as it could possibly be. The carrier said to me, he goes, "You're new, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I could do it for 1,600. And I said, "Well, that's funny because you ran it last week for 14. I got to stick you at 14. He goes, "I thought you said you were new." So right away, I realized what I'd be good at. I'm great at negotiating, but there was a lot I needed to learn.
Yeah. It's so funny. So what the lesson from that is this, okay? Yes, you want to be as educated as you can about your niche, but you don't need to wait for all the lights to turn green before you head to work in the morning. In other words, you don't have to be an expert in every element of your niche before you dig in. A lot of that you're going to learn along the way. And yeah, you're going to make some mistakes. And yeah, there's going to be a little bit of embarrassment. And yeah, you might get called out. Who cares? That's how we learn, right? Sometimes we win, sometimes we learn. That's how it works. So if you're sitting there in perpetual research mode or paralysis by analysis, you're not helping anybody, including yourself. So dig in and take some calculated risks. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So question, Jordan, Ricky, thanks for the time and great insight. How much capital is smart to have to get first few loads covered before receiving payment? Okay. Well, he's not a broker, but he could probably tell you from a perspective of an agent. So yeah, go ahead. Feel free, Ricky.
What's
an average load? I mean, what's your average load retail?
What's 20? Well, with mine, I do a lot of local, but 2250, which I think may be low on the spectrum. 2250 is my average revenue.
Yeah. If you blend long, short, medium haul stuff, I mean, 2250 sounds reasonable, right? Sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
A lot of short haul stuff is 600-800. You know what I mean?
So 2250, and then figure I'm doing 25 to 30 loads a week. That's average. I mean, I have weeks where I do 50, I have weeks where I do 20, right? And then my best paying customers, which is also my first customer, he's a friend of mine. I know him outside of brokering. He pays me with 21 days, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
And then just about
loads. Yeah, that's
you're not going to get paid for that, but that's a really good, like everybody else is 35, 40.
Yeah. On average, you're going to be in that 35 to 45 day, cycle. You'll get some shippers that'll pay you quick,
or you get burned.
Yeah,
that happens too.
But but as far as your first few loads, to hone in on your real question, which was to have you get your first few loads covered, if you were moving 2 loads at 2250, then
do the math.
It's 20. You got to pay the carriers 2250 minus your margin. Let's just assume it's 2,000 for easy math. If you're making 20%, right, then you're going to have to pay the carriers 1,600 out of that. So if you had 2 loads moved today, 30 days from now, you're going to have to be doling out at least $3,200. Okay. So that's to move your first couple loads. So, you can cash flow it out of your own finances and your own credit as needed. But what most people do is they use factoring. Okay. So they'll use factoring, or what I call OPM, other people's money. There's a cost to it, but it gives you the confidence to know that those carriers will be paid on time, and that your credit, that you're not going to be, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, right? If your shipper doesn't pay you for 40 days, you still make sure your carrier gets paid based on their terms. And if you want to build a reputation in the industry, a good reputation at least, you're going to have to pay carriers on time. Okay, so I hope that helps. All right, any other questions? And then we're gonna let Ricky go. You guys got about 60 seconds to type any questions, and then we're gonna let him go for today. You can see he's obviously busy. he's trying to handle some of this. So if you guys have questions for me before we go, if not, listen, I really appreciate you guys here. If any of you, if you've gotten any value out of this, okay, hit me up in the comments, 1 to 10. 1, Dennis, this was terrible and you suck. 10, I learned a ton. Anything in between, let me know how you guys feel. You want more interviews like this from past clients or from success stories of new startup freight agents or startup brokers? Hit me up in the comments, 1 to 10. Let me know. And okay, a question from Abdullah. Okay, so question from Abdullah. How do you approach new shippers? Well, that's kind of the $64,000 question, right? I can tell you how not to approach them, okay? How not to approach them is simple. Don't use old school generic sales scripts. Like,
I have trucks in the area.
Yeah, I've got trucks in your area. I wonder if we can move some of your freight. Or, hey, I'm a freight broker. I can save you money on your loads. Or, hey, I'm a freight broker. We got access to thousands of trucks, right? They've heard all that garbage and malarkey a million times before. Okay. And the problem is that it has created and causes, now when they hear it, it causes a negative trigger response. So when they hear your cadence and they hear those words, they're like, oh, it's another phone jockey. I'm not interested. But what Ricky said and what I teach is you got to be a little bit different. You have to come up with a compelling sales hook. You have to be a little bit unique. You don't have to create a completely different sales pitch for every client, but the point is you need to be different. So can I give you a pitch over the phone here that's different? Am I going to give you a sales script? It's not about the sales script, right? What you have to understand is how to get people's attention, how to develop instant rapport, how to ask good questions to start developing that relationship and gathering sales intelligence. And that's everything that I do in the Sales Accelerator, right? So it's very hard to teach that in a format like this, but that's why I put together that group coaching program where I work in a group, but one-on-one with a small group of people to try to take that piece of my brain and transplant it into their head. Okay. So we've talked enough about that, but Ricky, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, as far as
yeah, again, it's kind of a generic question.
Everything. So yeah, I do a couple different things. One, I look up the shipper in the news, see if there's been any new news, if there was an article written about them and, a trade reference, saw that they were at this trade show. I might call them up and say, hey, I was planning on going to that trade show in Houston. Did you guys show up? Yeah, who is this? Yeah, no, we did go. Who is this? Well, now it's like a pattern interrupt already. He's not thinking freight. He's not, so there's that. And then, the other one I do is really I'll accentuate my accent. I'd be like, hey, I'll tell you, I'll pack the car and have it yet if you patch me through to the shipping manager. You know what I mean? Just like whatever. I mean, I know it sounds gimmicky, but it works sometimes. And then, I tell people, hey, I might be from the Northeast, but I'm just letting you know so you don't crucify me. I am not a Democrat. And because I'm calling people down south or whatever, I try to, and it can blow up in your face too. I've had that happen and laughed about it. So just whatever you can do to sound different, to talk about something specific to their business other than freight.
Yep.
If you bring up freight, it's instant. Oh yeah, I've got 3 guys. Yeah, I'm good. I'm all set. I don't need to onboard anymore.
If you want to get treated like a salesperson, sound
like one. Yeah.
If you want to be treated by like someone who's a valuable resource or an expert in your niche, then you got to talk like that. Okay. Takes a little bit of work, but it's worth it. The results show. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So another question. Betty Jones says, thank you, Ricky. Great encourager. I've been moving about 30-mile flatbed loads. I've been turned down so much. I thought about quitting one time when I pulled the first flatbed load. It felt so good. So I'm back in the game looking for shippers. Good. Awesome, Betty. Love it. All right, guys. Well, here's last one, and then we're going to go. This is a current client of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, Seamus Burns. When negotiating with carriers, what's the best payment time to gain them as a carrier for your freight? I have factoring. So you're talking about terms to the carrier, right? I think that's what Shaman's talking about.
I think that's the only way. So, I mean, very rarely does it get asked. To me, it's a little bit of a red flag when they do. It depends. You get some carriers say, hey, do you have quick pay? Yeah, I do have quick pay. 2.75%, 48 hours or whatever the terms are. And, but everything's net 30,
Yeah. Typical terms for trucking with broker to carrier, 30 days. And unless they specifically tell you they have a reason why they need it earlier, they want a quick pay, whether that be a 1 day or a 5 day or whatever, it depends. But again, when they start asking about when they're going to get paid, you should have a little bit of a red flag. You should make sure that you peel that onion back a little bit further on the due diligence and make sure that you're not putting yourself in a position or your client in a position or anybody in a position where this thing might fall apart because it's part of a scam. So I think that advice from Ricky is sound advice. So awesome, guys. Well, listen, Ricky, you the man.
We try.
I appreciate you being here. It's been great catching up. I'm going to let you go. I know your phone sounds like it's getting busy.
Starting to add up. Yeah.
I really appreciate you being here. I know that we'll continue our conversations. And if you ever need any help, you reach out to me. Okay.
Absolutely. Stay tuned.
Thanks, guys.